Welcome to the Sandhills Media Ministry. We hope this production encourages and challenges you to live a more Christ-centered life.
Good morning. Welcome to Sandhills Community Church. We're glad you're here. In fact, if you're visiting with us for the first time today, if you don't mind taking that blue card that's in the seat back in front of you and just fill that out, and you can put it in one of the black boxes on either side of our sound booth in the back. Or an easier and more technological way to do it is to take a picture of that QR code, go to the website, and then you can fill out your information online. Just makes it a little bit easier for you. Today is the day of our Summer Fest, and so we're excited about that. Got a lot of food trucks outside. In fact, I had a conversation with a guy this last week. I, of late, have found myself in car part stores more often, and I was having a conversation with a guy this last week, and I just ended up mentioning that we had this big event coming up, and he had said, well, what are you doing at your church? And I said, well, we got a bunch of activities and stuff. It's really kid-friendly. We're doing a lot of kid type of stuff back there, and he didn't have any kids. And he's like, oh, okay. I said, yeah, and then we got a bunch of food trucks coming out. And he's like, I'm sorry, what was that last thing? I said, we got a bunch of food trucks coming out. And he said, when's your event start? I said, 12:30. He said, I'll see you there. So I don't know if you're here today, guy, but it's good to see you if you're here. So good stuff going on here, but I love summer. We can't stay inside forever. We got to get out there and enjoy ourselves. So, the weather's going to be a little warm today. It's Columbia. What are you going to do? But like I tell people, we're in management, not ownership. So there's nothing we can do about the weather. We just enjoy it. So that's what we do. And you still got to get outside, like I said. So one thing you probably don't know about me, I don't think I've talked about it much here, is so I love blueberries. I love blueberries. So much so I probably need a support group of some sort. It's like I'm deep in. And this house that we live in now, we bought it about 7-8 years ago, and it has a blueberry patch. I don't mean blueberry bush or two. I could fill a lot of the center part of the stage to the back here. I've got a place that I pull pounds of blueberries a year out of this place. And so when we first moved into the house and I saw that, I was like, you've got to be kidding. It's like almost the reason we bought the house, right? Don't even need the house. How much for the blueberries? And it was fun, too, because we've got these fence neighbors. And the fence neighbors, we were talking to them one day. Like, hey, welcome to the neighborhood. Good to see you guys. And y'all got a great blueberry patch back there. In fact, the previous lady that lived here, she would let us just go, pick blueberries during the summer. And I was like, uh-huh. In my head thinking, those days are done. It's not going to happen again. Now, to be fair, I do give them about a cup of blueberries a year, so I think it's fair. But I'm just into it, and I go out now. They've been producing berries for the past 3 weeks, and so I'm out there all the time. Well, one of the struggles that I have now is I have a bunch of mosquitoes that are in and around my bushes. They hide under the shade of the bushes, and so it's bad. I was picking this last week. It was so bad. Like they're swarming me. I can't see. It's one you got some blueberries and you got some mosquitoes. Okay, so you struggle with mosquitoes, some bites and stuff. No, I can't see. They're getting around. There's so many. They're in my eyeballs. I'm out there. One of them bit me on the nose. I'm like, who bites on the nose? Of course, some of you might think, we think that would be the most likely. But it was just so weird. Normally the way I deal with my mosquito problem is I just go out and I kind of present myself as an offering. I just start with that. I'm like, here we are. And then they will just do what they do. And then they leave and I can kind of pick berries in peace. And this time they were coming back for refills. And I was just like, I think we need to do something. It was just miserable. So I went back and I got off, which, that's what you use, right? So I showered myself with off, which I still had some clinging to me, and they got sprayed with off. So I'm thinking a mosquito sprayed with off. What does he do with himself? And so I just sprayed myself down, and then I go out, and I was like, okay, fine. Things were going good. So I start picking berries. A minute later, the effect had worn off, and you'd have thought I had slathered myself in Chick-fil-A sauce. I was just pounded by a mosquito, and so I just endured. I just endured the whole thing. And the whole time I just kept saying to myself, okay, it's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. It's going to be worth it. And so, here's how this ends up. So a day later, of course, the mosquito bites have all diminished. I don't retain those, fortunately. And then I have a bunch of blueberries in my refrigerator. And the thing I'm reminded of so often is, if we're not careful, we will let momentary distractions keep us from greater things, right? And that happens in small ways and it happens in huge ways. Momentary distractions will keep us from greater things. And we don't ever want that to happen. And that actually ties into our story today. So if you have your Bibles handy, go to Mark chapter 10. Mark chapter 10. Go ahead and open your Bibles or your digital device as the day may be. Mark chapter 10, we'll be starting in verse 46. And we're going to talk about a man who doesn't want momentary troubles to distract him from greater things, because the question he's asking at his point in life with the infirmity he struggles with is, how do I get God's attention? What do we have to do to get God's attention? Like, that's a question that I think almost all of us are asking, because when you go through the stuff of life, you want to know, what do I have to do to get God's attention? Like, does he even see the stuff going on in my life? And hopefully, you will come to the conclusion before we're done that he does. But let's explore that together. Let's talk about getting God's attention. Today we're going to be in Mark chapter 10, starting in verse 46. As we're going there, let me give you some context. Now, I love to study the Bible. I don't just want to read the Bible. I like to study the Bible. And as we study, we want to know context. The context here is this. Jesus is heading into his last week of his life on earth. This is heading into normally what we would study at Easter. This is studying now the Passion Week of Christ. And passion, of course, does not refer to the love of Jesus. Another definition of passion is suffering. And so when we talk about the passion of the Christ, we mean the suffering of the Christ. We're heading into that week. Now, he's told his disciples that 3 times explicitly, that he is headed to Jerusalem, and when he gets there, he's going to be betrayed, and he'll be arrested, and he'll be tortured, and he'll be crucified. And then eventually they will put his body into a tomb. Now we know that on the 3rd day, he'll walk out of that tomb and satisfy the demands of God on life for us. And for those now who put their faith in him, we find forgiveness forever. But that's the week that we're heading into. Now, the disciples traveling with him, even though they've been told explicitly, they don't yet understand that that's going to happen. Now, the reason they don't, to give them some grace here, is because the Holy Spirit has hidden it from their eyes. He's hidden understanding from them. So even though Jesus told them, they don't get it. But that sets the context for what's going on, which I think then, when we dig into our story, makes the story much more incredible. I mean, just that Jesus is headed towards this, and yet all the rest of this would happen. All right, so let's go ahead, Mark chapter 10, let's just look at verse 46. It says, and they, that is Jesus and his disciples, came to Jericho, and as he was leaving Jericho with his disciples and a great crowd, Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside. All right, so now here's a little bit of our context. We know they're in Jericho. Now we're going to put the map up here. And I love maps. The reason I love maps is it reminds me that this faith that we have, that we study, this is absolutely real. None of this is made up. This is all real. It's based on real things, real places, real people. So here we are. This is Israel in the time of Christ. We see just above the Dead Sea, we see Jericho. Anybody here ever been to the Dead Sea, by the way? Dead Sea people? Okay, so here, you got to take a trip to Israel, and you got to get in the Dead Sea. It will burn you, but you'll love it. It'll be fun. So, all right, the Dead Sea, northwest of the Dead Sea is Jericho, and then Jericho's northeast of Jerusalem. Now, what is hard to see probably from your seats is there's a dotted line coming down through Jericho going to Jerusalem, and what that indicates is it's a main road. This is a main road. Now, here's something else you need to know about Passover in Jerusalem. Like, if you were a God-honoring Jew, going to Jerusalem at Passover was like, that's something you do. Like, that's just, we do this every year. We go during Passover, we go to Jerusalem. If you're a God-fearing Gentile, non-Jewish person, you would also try to go, maybe not every year, but if you're in the area, you would like to get there. And so when we say people are going to Jerusalem, you need to know it's an amazing amount of people. Now, a historical account, just a few years after this, says that there were millions of people celebrating Passover, or over 1 million people celebrating Passover in Jerusalem. So when we say there's a lot of people going to Jerusalem, it's a lot of people, right? And this is on a main road. So when we're reading this, it says, Jesus, his disciples, and a great crowd are headed to Jerusalem. A great crowd was following Jesus, absolutely true. These are his disciples, a lot of them. And then even to the point where it's disturbed the religious leaders. They don't like that so many people are following Jesus. But it is also that Jesus, his disciples, the crowd of others who are following him, and then another crowd of people are all headed to Jerusalem. So the road is packed. All right, now we come upon this guy, Bartimaeus. Now, Bartimaeus says the son of Timaeus. Now, this is interesting, a little bit of tidbit here. So in the original language, whenever you'd see bar in front of a name, it means son of. Son of. So Bartimaeus literally means son of Timaeus, and I love that like Mark's writing to Gentiles. He's like, you guys don't know this, so let me spell it out for you. A guy named Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, which is literally what Bartimaeus means. And so if you've ever seen in Scripture where it says Simon Bar Jonah, that means Simon, son of Jonah. So that's what you see there. So, all right. So he's going along. This guy's there. Now, of course, it makes sense that beggars would seek him out, that they would want to be around not just Jesus, but they want to be around the crowd of people because for them, this is a big deal. They are not foreign to trying to get money from people, strangers who are passing by. And so if I tell you that beggars were common in the first century, that's probably an understatement. But here we are in 21st century Colombia, and beggars aren't foreign to your experience either. If you go downtown Columbia, or even if you shop at Walmart up here on Two Notch Road, there are people standing by the side of the road who are asking for money. And so Jesus made a comment years ago that the poor you will always have with you, and he's absolutely right. They still surround us to this day. But it is interesting with this. There are other times when Jesus will heal people, and the comment will be something like this. A man came up to Jesus, or a woman knelt at the feet of Jesus. And these are people, like, we don't hear their names. With Bartimaeus, we know his name. We even have a little detail that it means son of, like, we've gotten some extra stuff here. So one question might be is, why do we know more about Bartimaeus than we do some of the other people Jesus healed? And I think probably the answer will lie in his response by the end of this passage here. But it seems to me that there's something really special going on in this moment. So let's go forward in our story and find out some things going on here. Let's get to verse 47. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and to say, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. All right, so let's think about this for just a minute. Now, this is a blind man. Now, I have never had blindness, praise the Lord, but I can't imagine what it would be like. Now, I do have some friends with disabilities, legitimate physical disabilities. And listen, nobody wants that. And there may be even some with us this morning, you have that, or people you love have that. And it's just so sad to watch people go through life with physical disabilities. Praise God, they can overcome in many ways. But here in the 21st century U.S., we're so fortunate that through government funding and local initiatives and loving family members and stuff, like, we do our best to make accommodation for those who have physical disabilities. You go back to first century Jewish people who are impoverished and governed by an evil empire, the Roman Empire, like, their advantages are few. I mean, there's no social program going on to give you the assistance that you need. You're dependent on other people. And so these beggars would line the roads, especially during times of year like this, and they're just asking for anybody to have some mercy on them. But in particular, this is interesting. He hears it's Jesus of Nazareth, and then he begins to cry out, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Now, when it says he cries out, now you need to understand what's happening here. There's crowds of people, tons of people everywhere. He's not just going, oh, hey, Jesus, hey, over here. No, he's got to shout over a ton of people on the road, the chaos that would be on the road, livestock, people, noise, conversation. Like, he's got to cover the whole thing. So when we say he's over there shouting, he is shouting out, trying to get Jesus' attention. So he's screaming out for Jesus to pay attention to him. And then obviously he's heard of Jesus because they tell him, who is it? It's Jesus of Nazareth. And he doesn't shout out, Jesus of Nazareth, have mercy. He doesn't say that. He says, Jesus, son of David. And then we go, whoa. All right, so for us, we're going to go, yeah, what's the big deal? Okay, let's talk about what the big deal is. So the big deal is Jewish people historically, and even those who don't follow Christ to this day, have been waiting for God to send his anointed one to earth. Now, anointed one literally is what Messiah means. Messiah literally means anointed one. And so what they're waiting for is the anointed one of God who will come and will rule this planet, rule this universe from Jerusalem. And so that's what they're waiting on. And so when this man shouts out, Jesus, son of David, that's a messianic proclamation, because the Messiah was supposed to come from the line of David. And so the idea was that there's going to be the son of David, this descendant of David that will sit on the throne as Messiah. And he is pausing, this blind man is pausing to acknowledge that he believes Jesus is the one. All right, it's just not a kind thing he's saying to him. He is making a declaration about the identity of Christ as best as he understands it. And even if he doesn't fully understand all of that, he does know that Jesus is merciful and has the gift of healing. And so he is crying out for mercy from the Lord. He's asking if the Lord could help him. Now, in other healings in Scripture, which is really weird, like, Jesus goes around, he heals other people in Scripture, and then after he heals them, a lot of times he'll make this comment. He'll be like, hey, don't tell anybody what I did for you. Don't tell anybody. right? Now, so it's funny, but like if I healed somebody, I'd let you tell anybody you wanted to. Right? You go tell them, hey, Jeff healed me. Like, all right, make sure you let everybody know. That's what I have. But and it would be neat to have that power, right? But for about 15 minutes. Because here's the thing. What do you think would happen to you if the entire world found out that you have the capacity to heal at will? Your life would be a nightmare within 24 hours. Like your first news interview would be fun. And the posts on Facebook and social media and Instagram and all that, TikTok, whatever you're on, I don't know. Like you'd be on all this stuff and it would be great for just a moment. And then you would never be able to leave your house again. That's how where you'd have so many people and they'd be breaking into your house. They'd be destroying your property just to get to you. And then it's no longer about you. It's just about what you can do for them. That's what they want from you, right? So interesting, you get a little peek into the life of Christ at that moment. This is why Jesus said, don't tell anybody. Because he was saying, like, I came to proclaim a word. If everybody just comes to me because they want stuff from me, they want healing from me, everything falls apart. And so don't tell anybody. Now, when he heals, and you're going to see this in a little bit, when he heals Bartimaeus, doesn't say anything, just goes on, right? Now, here's the reason. He's at the end of his life. And this is something I've noticed about humanity even. When you know you're going to die, you just live life differently. You just say whatever you want to say, whenever you want to say it. This is the thing I've noticed with people who are dying. So I had a friend of mine years ago who had Lou Gehrig's disease. And so he is headed into, he knows it's a death sentence. And he was getting closer and closer. And but it just changed the way that he did life. He began to live wide open for Jesus. And so there's this story where he had gone to this wings bar, and it was the middle of the afternoon, and he was getting some wings, and so he just sat at the bar area and ordered some wings, and this guy sat down next to him. And this guy that sat down next to him was just like, life stinks. And so my friend turns to him, he's like, really? And so he's like, oh gosh, and he just starts going on about work and relationships and people and how horrible life is. And then he says, so what's your deal? And my friend said, well, I'm dying of Lou Gehrig's disease. And the guy's like, what? And he said, yeah, I've got this death sentence hanging over me now. And the guy was like, I just spent all this time complaining. Like, I'm so sorry. And my friend's like, well, since you bring it up, let's have a conversation. And just went on to talk about Jesus with this guy sitting next to him. And I was just like, I would like for us to get to that point now, as all of us who really are dying at some point. But I just realized people do life differently, and even true with Jesus. Like he gets to the end of his life and it's like, we're doing it different now. You want to tell somebody? Tell anybody. Let them know what I can do and who I am. And so, but he's screaming out, have mercy on me. And as we asked the question at the beginning, what do we have to do to get God's attention? What do we have to do to get God's attention? One of the things we know, based off what this guy does, is when he cries out to Jesus, he cries out in humility. Just very humbly. Like he doesn't demand. He doesn't sit there going, life has done me wrong. Or even worse, God has done me wrong. Jesus, fix this thing. And I think there are a lot of people living life that way. That when they hit difficulty, it's like, God, you're doing this. You need to fix it. And this is an idea that you expect God to be subject to you. And God just doesn't do that. He's willing to be our Lord. He's not willing for us to be his Lord. Right? And so here's this guy's crying out. So he cries out in humility. He's making a request. Like, Jesus, son of David, I recognize who you are. Would you please have mercy on me? He's not expecting. He's not demanding. He's just like, would you please have mercy on me? Very likely, Jesus could just pass him by. Jesus could just, walk on by, ignore him, not hear him. But the man just does what he can. He just cries out. So let's move forward just a little bit. Verse 48. And many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. But he cried out all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. So this is interesting. So look at these people now. Because don't you think, if Jesus is walking down the road, and we know a little bit about this guy, right, at this point. Like we're 3 years into his public ministry. We're at the end. So he has done healings. He's raised the dead. I mean, he's got a prolific portfolio of healing people. And so here's this blind guy shouting out, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Don't you think some of us would be like, oh, hey, Jesus, there's a guy over here. He needs you, right? This guy's struggling. Right? And what do they say instead? Would you please be quiet? We're trying to hear from the healer over here. Like this, I don't know what's in their head right now. So like, just be quiet. And so, like a lot of things, like if you ever tried to tell your kids to be quiet, right? They just amp it up all the more. Oh, you want me to be quiet? I'm going to take it to level 11. I'm going to pop it right up there. And so that's what he just cranks it up. And he continues with the messianic proclamation. Son of David, have mercy on me. So again, back to identity. I know who you are. I know who you are. Would you please have mercy on me? So he cries out again for some pity. And I think too, like part of this, I think is just part of being in and around a big city. So I don't know if you've ever lived in a big city, like bigger than Columbia, right? So like a real big city. So I had a chance years ago to go to New York City, and New York City was fun to visit. I wouldn't want to live there, but it was fun to visit. But one of the things is you're just surrounded by needy people all the time. They're everywhere. They're beggars everywhere. And I would imagine that if you are surrounded by people in intense poverty all the time, you probably just become numb to it. And probably if one of those people begins to disrupt your life, because you've got different segments of society. These are the people in need. We're the people that kind of have it all together. And so one of them begins to pipe up and they start shouting. You're like, hey, you're disrupting the peace of the blessed people, right? Like, so you just be quiet over there. So there seems to be something of that going on with these people. There's like, hey, let's hold it down. Jesus doesn't want to hear from you. Like you're not in that world. He's special. He's different. We're the type of people that we can walk along the road, be with him. You're of that other group of people, not blessed by God, sitting by the wayside. Just be quiet, would you? So this is the mentality, it seems a little bit, as they're trying to shut this guy down. But fortunately, he goes from feeling forgotten to being seen. He does get seen by the Lord. Look at verse 49. And Jesus stopped and said, call him. And they called the blind man, saying to him, take heart, get up, he's calling you. I know, hold up. Weren't you just the same group of people being like, shut up? This is the thing that just strikes me as funny. Like, Jesus said, would you be quiet? And Jesus over there, I tell him to come to me. The master wants to talk to you. Like, who are you? What is your deal? Like, you schizophrenic, bipolar weirdo. What are you doing, And so, no, this is all going on here. And so, now they've changed their whole tune. They're going to go get him now. Hey, the master, let's go talk. One of the things I'm reminded of is that Jesus listens with a different ear. Jesus, because here's the thing. When you cry out to the Lord, and let this be an encouragement to you. Because I know there's a bunch of times where you cry out to the Lord, and your thought is this, like, God, do you even hear me? Because you'll finish praying, and then you're just in a quiet room again. And it's like, Lord, do you even hear me? Okay, let me encourage you. He hears you. He does hear you. And here's what else he hears. He doesn't just hear your words. He hears your heart, right? Jesus is like, I hear what you're saying, and I know what you're saying. All right, it's almost like a different level. So this man crying out, Jesus hears what he's saying, but then he hears what's really going on in here. He hears his heart. He hears his mind. He can hear deeper than what's going on there. So Jesus listens with a different ear. And again, keep in mind where Jesus is going. This is why it's fascinating to me. Jesus, I would imagine, even though, I know he's divine and human. He's got this weird thing he's walking in. But I would think at this moment, he's really sensing the weight of what he's about to do. I have no idea what it would be like to bear the weight of the sin of billions of people. Like, what would that even be like? To bear this idea that you are very shortly going to have the Father God turn his face from you and reject you, and you've never felt that in your entire life. Like, there's something horrible he's about to go through, willingly subjecting himself to it. And in the middle of this, a guy says, would you have mercy on me? If I'm Jesus, I'm thinking, like, I'm about to have mercy on the whole universe. Would you just, be? And Jesus is like, you know what? I have time for you. Now, what a great thing. God never has so much going on in his life or running the universe that he doesn't have time for you. God always has time for you. That's one of the great things about omnipotence. I was talking to a friend of mine recently who pastors up in Boone, North Carolina, and he said, you know what omnipotence is, Jeff? I think I shared it here a few weeks ago. I was like, what is omnipotence? He said, omnipotence is having the power to do anything in the universe that can be done all at one time and yawn. I was like, oh, that's good. That's good. Like, I have the power to do anything that is possible at any one time in the entire universe and yawn. It's like, this is no big deal. So to say that God has time for you, God always has time for people. So he hears this man crying out. He hears his heart. He hears his mind. And what he does here, and we're going to find out here in a little bit, is he hears a call of faith. And it reminds me of this, is that faith always precedes blessing. Faith always precedes blessing. Having faith. Now, faith too, let's talk about this. Faith is never in the thing that you want to be done, right? I have faith that I'm going to have this prayer answered. No, you actually don't have that kind of right. Like, well, I believe it's going to happen. No, you don't have that right either. I have faith in the one who can make it happen. I believe in a God who can do anything. I believe in a God who invites me to ask anything I will, but only does what he will. And I'm okay with that because I understand that he's the Lord, not me. right? And so that's what faith is. Faith is believing in the Lord and his capacity. And so faith does precede blessing. So here's what we see in verse 50. And throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and he came to Jesus. This is one of those, there's a lot of things in Scripture I'd like to see. This one I would love to see, where this man, desperate for hope, can't even see, jumps up and starts working his way to Jesus. To see a blind man do that, I mean, clearly somebody's got to come alongside. They've got to help him. He doesn't quite know where Jesus is, I'm sure, though he hears his voice. And Jesus, it doesn't look like departed from where he was. He says, call him, like bring him to me. And so this man is rushing to Jesus now. I think that would be a really beautiful scene. And so then we get to this weird conversation, verse 51. And Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" And the blind man said to him, "Rabbi, let me recover my sight." This is so funny. What do you want me to do for you? I'm blind, you heal people. I don't know, maybe you can figure this out. It's not rocket science, right? But here's the thing, Jesus pauses to ask him. So why would Jesus ask him? Clearly Jesus knows, right? So, okay, let's pause for a second. Let's talk about prayer. In prayer, should you even have to say words when you pray? I mean, doesn't God know exactly, God knows every word you'll ever speak for the rest of your life. He can see and hear, he can see and hear. I mean, couldn't prayer just be this? Hey, God, amen. Couldn't that be prayer? I mean, because he sees everything. And so maybe marriage helps with this a little bit. So I'm married. I've been married for 28 years. I know exactly how long I've been married. I literally had to do that math right before I walked out here. So I've been married 28 years. Now, a lot of times I'll come home from work and I see my wife sitting here today, so I have to be generous in all of my words here because she's wonderful and everything to me, and I'm nothing without her. My wife will ask me sometimes, "How did work go today?" And I'll tell her, "It was fine. It's great." Okay, I just spent 8 hours at work dealing in stuff, and she is not satisfied with the summation of great or fine or it was okay, right? That's just not what's it. So what if I say to her though, "Hey babe, we don't have to talk every time I come home. You get it, right? I've been doing this for a long time. You know how my days go. I know how your days go." All right? Now what would happen if I did that to my wife? Yeah, we'd be in counseling soon. Or I'd be spending some nights on the couch. I mean, there'd be something happening there. Yeah, so why does my wife want to hear from me, even though she probably has heard more from me than she ever really wanted to in her entire life? What is the point? It's because of relationship. That's what you do with relationship. Relationship is built on communication, conversation, sharing your hearts. It doesn't even matter. What'd you do today? I don't even care if you just went and ate at Wendy's. Just tell me, how was it? How was your Frosty? Whatever. So, and Frosty, by the way, fantastic. What a great invention. So that's the thing. So here's the thing with God. God wants to hear from us because of relationship. He wants to have a relationship with his people. So you could go and go, "Hey God, wait. Is this about you or him?" And I'll tell you something else about prayer. Prayer also affirms your faith. It's not all about God. It's about you. That I get who you are, I get who I am, and that's why I ask, because I understand the roles that we play here. You are sovereign over the universe. The fact that you would even pause to listen to me is a miracle in itself. And really, in many ways, I'm nothing. And so, Lord, that you would pause to listen to me, that's an amazing thing. And so we want to make sure we understand what we're doing. So this is kind of an idea of prayer for me. What do you want me to do for you? And he says, "Well, Lord, I can't see. I'd like to recover my sight." And so Jesus says this to him, "Go your way. Your faith has made you well." And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him on the way. So now the man is seeing clearly. Jesus heals him. Now, Jesus makes an interesting comment here. You saw it here, right? Your faith has made you well. Go on your way. I think sometimes when people pray to the Lord, it's like this. "God, I'm desperately in need of something. Would you please do this for me?" And then God, sometimes in his mercy, will do it. They're like, "Okay, I'll do that for you." And then you're like, "Great, I'll check back in with you when I need more stuff," right? I mean, there's just some times where that happens. And that's not at all what happened in this case. Jesus heals him, says, "All right, now you're free to go. Go do your own thing." And the guy's like, "Yeah, you know what? I'm coming with you." And Jesus is like, "What?" All right, let's do this. So that's instant disciple made right there. And that's something I've just seen is that when God dramatically touches somebody, they don't just dismiss it or "that's nice" or "I'm glad I'm going to heaven." They're like, "Where are you going? I'm going with you," right? That's what it means to be a disciple of Christ. And that's what this guy does is he falls in with the disciples and he starts going with him. And he also wants to go to Jerusalem because there's also this thing in their culture where you have to present yourself at the temple when you've been dramatically healed by God. So he's going to do that as well. Here's what we know. When it comes to how the Lord answers, when we talked about the beginning, what do we have to do to get God's attention? Two things we've talked about. One is you ask humbly. And the second is you have to have faith. So humbly with faith. That's what you have to do. So there are many who cry out to Jesus, but he sees the heart. Because see, there's a lot of the things that people want from the Lord all the time. And I think sometimes if we're not careful, we approach the Lord like he's a genie who grants wishes. Right? We don't want that. That's not Lord. I don't know what that is. That's something false. When we approach him as our sovereign creator who wants to have a relationship with us, that's different. Then we make requests. We don't make demands. They're not wishes, they're prayers. And he has asked for something from the Lord. Ironically, this good news of Christ, while it allows blind people to see, sometimes it blinds those who think they can see. There's a part of that in our culture today. Like, I think if you ask them in their culture, like, do you think you'll go to heaven? Those people on the road, do you think you'll go to heaven? I think they would say yes. And if you were to ask them, why do you think you'll go to heaven? It wouldn't be about the man Jesus of Nazareth, the son of David who's walking beside them. I think they would say, I'm going to go to heaven because I was born Jewish. We're children of God. We go to heaven. That's what we do. You know, it's like we were designed, we were born for this, right? It would be like my kids. If you were to ask my kids, do you think you'll go to heaven one day when you die? And my kid's going, oh yeah. No, why do you think you'll go to heaven? Well, my dad's a pastor. I hate to break this to all y'all, and I hope this is not a disappointment. I can't get anybody into heaven. I mean, if you're sitting here thinking, can you put in a good word for me? No, I'm still trying to put in a good word for myself. Like, it's not, you're on your own, right? So here's the thing, none of us are any good to ourselves in that regard. So there's a blindness that some of us do have. And in fact, I would even say this, Bartimaeus' biggest problem was not his physical blindness. It was a spiritual blindness. Something that he was coming out of as he began to recognize the identity of Christ. And so I would say that this is a good story, this is a sweet story, but there's a bigger story going on, and the bigger story ties into our story because we too have a blindness. We have a spiritual blindness. We've been talking in our church recently about some really key verses from the book of Romans. And there's some verses in there that remind us of who we are. Like, one of them is this: all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. All have sinned. Like, I don't have to ask you if you're a sinner. I already know you're a sinner. Like, if we were doing a who here's a sinner? Like, listen, sin, anything we have done or thought that is opposed to the will of God, we've all committed that. And like, my life has been a story of that. And my journey in this started towards the Lord when I was back working at Chick-fil-A when I was 16 years old, and had a chance to meet this older couple, Bob and Betty Wingate. And they would come and eat every night when we were closing our Salisbury Chick-fil-A. And as we're sitting there in the dining room, they would talk to me about the Lord, and they'd brought up this idea of sin, and are we sinners? And they thought I was a Christian, so they're just talking to me like one person to another. And they were talking about sin, and I'm thinking in my head, like, I know what sin is. I love sin. I want more of sin. If I could get more of sin, I would get more of sin. Like, I am on the sin track. In fact, I'm going to go to college and major in sin. That is my goal. So all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. So I knew that. If you'd asked me, Jeff, are you a sinner? Absolutely. But then something else the Bible tells us is that the wages of sin is death. And now, wages make sense. It's something you earn because of what you've done. The wages of sin is death. And what the Bible means, what God means about death is not just physical death, we're all going to die, but a spiritual death. That is an eternity away from our Creator where we suffer in torment. That's what the Bible says happens to those who die apart from Christ. The wages of sin is death. And, you know, I had heard that as well. So when I'm talking to Bob and Betty at the Chick-fil-A and they're going through all this stuff, I'm like, I go to church. I mean, I get it. And then they talked about how Jesus had died for us and given his life for us. And those who put their faith in him could find forgiveness for their sin on earth and in heaven, which reminds us of another verse in Romans where it says, if we confess with our mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in our heart that God raised him from the dead, we will be saved. Now, if you'd asked me in that Chick-fil-A, Jeff, do you think you'll go to heaven? I'd be like, oh, absolutely. Why? Well, I go to church and I'm a pretty good person. Listen, I would have had nothing that I articulated about basing my salvation on what Jesus had done for me. It would just be stuff that I was doing for him, And that has nothing to do with it. This idea of confessing Jesus as Lord, believing in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you'll be saved. And if you do that, you end up with this wonderful promise in another verse in Romans that, therefore, since you've been justified by faith, you have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. So when I was sitting with Bob and Betty and they're sharing all this stuff with me, I was just nodding along. Yeah, I get it. And then they got to the end of this and they said, now here's the thing, Jeff, everybody has to independently respond to the Lord and put their faith in him, right? And so they're just sharing, I get like one person to another, just sharing that with me. And this little booklet they were kind of talking to me about, they had a little prayer in the back of it. And this prayer was just a simple way to articulate your faith in Jesus. Jesus, I recognize that you died for me. I recognize that I'm sinful. I need your forgiveness. It's just a prayer of stuff like that. And they just gave it to me. They're like, yeah, this is good stuff. You should share it with one of your friends. And so they walked out of the Chick-fil-A that night and man, I just remember, I tell people this all the time, that I felt like, I had this feeling like God was in the room with me, but he was just kind of over my shoulder and out of sight. I couldn't see him, but I knew he was there. And when I got in my car that night to leave, it just struck me. This is real. This whole thing is real. I have never actually professed Jesus as my Lord. And now, Lord, you have to understand, it's not just a declaration of who he is by way of identity. Lord is a declaration of who he is to you, meaning in charge of, sovereign over, you're submissive to. I had never given Jesus that role in my life. I just expected him to receive me. And so I remember as I was in my car getting ready to drive home that night, I just bowed my head and I just prayed. And I just confessed that I was sinful, that I needed the forgiveness of Christ, and I needed his rescue. And if he would show mercy to someone like me, I would follow him all the days of my life. I don't know if you've made that decision yet, but we all have to. Nobody's getting there because of the good things you've done or the church you go to. Let's pray. Lord Jesus, we recognize that you are the Lord. You're the Son of David. You're the Messiah, the anointed one that was to come. Lord, we recognize that we are sinful people who by nature are far from you. And yet, Lord, in your kindness and your mercy, you walked to Jerusalem. You suffered at the hands of evil people, even to the point where you were crucified on a cross. And on that cross, you took upon yourself the consequence of every sinner who would ultimately put their faith in you. And on that Sunday morning, you walked out of the tomb, proving you had satisfied the demands of God on mankind. But Lord, it's not automatic for everyone, everywhere. We have to ask you individually. We have to put our faith in you individually. And so, Lord, may it be right now that you hear this prayer of faith. Jesus, we believe in you. We believe that you are not just the Lord. We believe that you are our Lord. And we're asking you right now, Lord, please be in charge of our life. We ask forgiveness for all of our sins, past, present, and future. And we submit ourselves to you. Lord, would you please fill us with your Spirit? Transform us into the people you want us to be. We want to walk with you in faith all the days of our life, to your glory and in your name. Amen.